looks and heaving one down the sideline, and he's got Cass Allen over the top. Big down the sideline. Touchdown. His signature move and his signature performance.
You're listening to the Bruin Bible. This is your host, Will Decker, bringing you UCLA football content all throughout the year for LA Football Network.
Up, LAFB fans, you are listening to the Bruin Bible right now, but we want to bring to you our sponsor for the show. It's Bet Online. Our partners at Bet Online continue to be the number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all of the latest odds, news, and sports developments, including this year's Wimbledon finals. I know our guy Madman will be all over that. The big tennis fan of the bunch. Major League Baseball, Dodgers in the midst of a big-time season, highest payroll in the league. 3 MVPs in the lineup. Can they figure it out? The latest fighting news, a huge MMA fight coming up this weekend for the UFC, and even next season's early NFL futures. I know you guys will be hammering the Rams and Chargers overs on the futures for next season. Head to our website to use your mobile device to sign up today to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code LAFB to get the bonus and get into the action. Bet Online, where the game starts. What is up, and welcome to a very, very special edition of the Bruin Bible. Will Decker, your host, in the house, joined by the Madman, as always, Jamal Madni below me. We got a special guest in the house, the Godfather himself. And to quote the Godfather, revenge is a dish best served cold. And I think that's what USC and UCLA did today to the Pac12. And he's got his whiskey out. He's celebrating. My man, rye or die. How you doing today, man?
What's up, my brother? Doing great. Excited to be on with you. This is just huge news for not just LA and UCLA and USC, but for college football, for sports, for everything.
LA
so
Football
excited.
Network.
The network as a whole. So just pumped to be on with you to be breaking it down. So thanks as always for having me on the beautiful Bruin Bible.
Brother, we're stoked to have you. And, I think we have so much to talk about, and I want to make sure we can hit a lot of different angles here. But I want to start with the first reaction you had. We were on a text chain this morning, and Ryan was the guy that actually put it in there. I'd heard some rumors, but it was, non-believable to me at the very best. To go, yeah, whatever. We hear about this stuff all the time. That sounds far-fetched as hell. He goes, you're hearing about this, Big Ten rumor. I go, yeah, whatever. And then it just became a real thing. It kind of progressed going forward. It was to the point where it likely to join. And then 2 hours later was already done. And it was just a shocking day. And I was telling the Madman before we even jumped on here, we're going to get into the winners and losers of today. The loser was my office and my work, because I got no work done today. Just going through what was going on through UCLA and USC, NBA free agency, just a wild day in sports history as a whole. I'm going to start with you, Madman. What are your initial reactions to UCLA and USC joining the Big Ten? Something that I never thought would happen. It's a more of a national footprint for UCLA and USC at this point. A lot more money on the table. But what was your first reaction to UCLA and USC joining the conference?
Thriller. To be honest with you, it was surreal. You had to sort of look at the text to say, am I really reading this correctly? Am I like hallucinating? What are these really? It's like Chandler and Friends when he had that line. He's like, "Are you really saying these words?" That's really what it felt like. It's an incredible day, no question about it. And it sort of speaks to how well these two institutions can kind of collaborate with one another, collaborate in private, in confidentiality and secret, because I think they were much further along, in terms of a deal than when it sort of got first reported to the media. I think this, obviously this was a meeting that I think was ready to be had, and the unanimous vote was to be done. And so, on the one hand, I'm very excited. I'm sure we'll get into it. I think that, economically, it's huge for both schools. I think it puts them on the map here with the Big Ten media rights deal. A little bit sad, given the nostalgia and the history of the Pac-8 and then the Pac-10 and the Pac-12. And who would have thought that USC and UCLA would be competing for the Rose Bowl for the Big Ten spot in the Rose Bowl as it stands right now? So just a wild day overall, but seismic.
Before I send it over to Ryan, that is something I'm very, sad about, is I do think the Rose Bowl is now tainted forever because this is just the tip of the iceberg. Oregon has too much money with Nike on the line to stay in a PAC conference that is without their 2 of their 3 big top dogs, right? They're going to be the next team following in line, probably heading to the Big Ten or wherever that may be. And then you got teams like Stanford, that are institutions that any conference would welcome. Do they stay in the PAC? I don't know, tip of the iceberg. But for me, when I heard the news, I just don't believe there can be a Rose Bowl that is the same of the Pac-12 going against the Big Ten. And that's a sad thing for me. That is a loss because the Rose Bowl growing up, I think it's one of the best traditions we have, not only in college sports, but sports alone. It's going to feel a little tainted there. And that does hurt a little bit to see the Rose Bowl go. But ride or die, give me your initial reaction. You were on the top of this before we both were. I want to hear your reaction. I mean, as somebody that is the guy that started the LA Football Network, we're taking it to another level, brother.
Well, so I went back real quick into the Slack archives, and I believe you actually said this is trash, and that's a quote.
That is, yeah, that's correct. I'm not a fan of it. I don't
love
like
it. Yeah, and we'll get into it. I love it. My initial reaction was, holy crap, we cannot. Okay, how do I say this correctly? Because obviously we loved it, but we cannot get a break as in LA football. There is always something going on. There is no offseason, whether it's the Rams, the Chargers, and now the Trojans and Bruins. It's like the work never stops. That was my first thought. Like, well, here we go. Another crazy day. Let's get into it. Let's dive in and have some fun. But no, when I first heard it, Will, I was intrigued. Again, I was like, wow, this is like a really big deal to just like pop up at 9 a.m. on a Thursday, but then it started really getting legs, and whenever there's smoke, there's usually fire, right? So at first I was like, all right, I'm intrigued, but I don't really believe it. And then when I started saying like, okay, this can happen, I wrapped my head around like, do I like it? Do I not like it? And I totally agree with everything you both said about the history, and that's so sad to see. But overall, I am through the moon for the move overall, just because I think for the brand of UCLA, the brand of USC, this is so huge for them. And obviously we're talking mainly football, but I think basketball also. The real question will be the other non-profitable sports, but we'll get into that some other day, and obviously not on this show necessarily. But I think overall this is such a huge move because when you look at the brand of the Big Ten, the B1G, right, that it is now, and I think it's just a great brand for football. Obviously, the money, I mean, we can talk about that, but, each team getting $100 million in media money right off the bat from this. So that's just going to be crazy for NIL deals. And me and Jamal have talked about like what kind of money Pac-12 teams actually have versus SEC teams. Well, now UCLA and USC can more so compete with that kind of NIL money. They already have the LA recruiting prowess. Now they add that to the resume. So we'll get into it. I don't want to take too much time on this beginning part, but I was very honestly happy about it. The more and more I think about it, the more and more happy I am about it. And I'll just say it with this. So I have something at home called the Infinity Bottle. And what this is I've mixed 18 different whiskeys in one bottle. It's a specialty that only comes out on special occasions. And I poured myself a glass for this episode of the Bruin Bible. So that's how I'm feeling right now.
Man, I'm hoping you can bring that to happy hour next week. We're doing an LA Football Network happy hour. Got to try this. This is the Infinity Stones of whiskey is what I'm gathering from this. A little Marvel stuff.
I don't
put
know
all the stones together and you have the ultimate whiskey.
4 teams in the Big Ten. That's the over-under to compare.
Too many to compare, my man. But I'm on the same wavelength. I think the first second I heard it was so foreign and so different that I did call it trash. I was not a fan. I did not like it. It feels foreign. UCLA, USC, they're West Coast teams. Them playing in the heart of the Midwest, that doesn't feel right to me. That is just something as someone that's grown up on the West Coast, that has grown up going to these football games, whether it be when I was a student at Arizona State, when I lived up in the Bay Area at Cal, whether we tailgated outside the USC, UCLA game last year. These are what I'm used to, West Coast teams making them play. But the more that I thought about it, just from a competition standpoint, how exciting this is for UCLA. I saw a stat that annually the Ohio States and Michigan, which are the class of the Big Ten, before UCLA and USC can go in there, they were making $20 million more annually than UCLA and USC due to the media rights deals and things like that, which allowed them to do bigger NIL deals, which is now a new part of it. And the big statement that really stood out to me today was actually not from a UCLA person, but it was from Mike Bond, the athletic director of USC. And just to quote him very quickly, he said, "This is the most volatile and uncertain era in the history of American collegiate athletics. USC must ensure it is best positioned and prepared for whatever happens next. It is our responsibility to always evaluate potential opportunities and be willing to make changes when needed." Just the word choice there, volatile, uncertain era of college sports. It shows that USC was ready to move on. And, I think the next question I've got for you guys is, how much is the Pac-12 to blame for UCLA and USC, taking that next step and secretly making plans to go to the Big Ten that was just realized today? I'm going to start with you, Ryan. How much of a percentage from 0 to 100 would you blame, Larry Scott, George Kliavkoff, for this mistake that is now going to cost the conference in ways that are unimaginable, a couple days ago even? So,
yeah, that's a great question, Will, and one that, Twitter is melting down over because of the, SC fans and UCLA fans are, I think overall are excited about the move. There's obviously some detractors and some that are talking about the history, and that's obviously totally fair. But I think overall they're excited, and the rest of the pack, or basically just non-Bruin and Trojan fans, are not happy, obviously. Yeah. And so I'll answer this in kind of twofold, starting with your actual question. I personally, and I've seen a lot of Twitter talking about the lack of success USC and UCLA has had over the last decade or so, and how they're taking that to blame on it. And, I understand doing that, but if you're predicating your conference success on one football team or one basketball team, and that's how you're going to make money in dollars, well, that's a leadership problem. I mean, that comes from the top down, and that's Larry Scott. If you are banking on SC football being the Clemson of the Pac-12, well, you've done something wrong in your strategy and how you plan for the future of Pac-12 if that's all you're relying on. And so, sure, we can point to if SC had been dominant the last decade, this wouldn't have happened. But I think, and this is how I answer the next point, I think when you look at Mike Bone and you look at Martin Jarmond, they're both very forward-thinking ADs, and also, Carol Folt as the president of SC, both very forward-thinking in the fact that they looked at what the Pac-12 has been. They looked at what SC and UCLA has been and said, how do we not just relive our past, but better our futures? Mike Bone, remember, moved Colorado from the Big 12 to the Pac-12. He was a part of that move, so he'd already done it before. Martin Jarmond comes from a history of the Big Ten, working at Ohio State, and then obviously went to Boston College after that. But so there's legacy and connections there. So definitely there is a lot to blame with the deficiencies of Larry Scott and the Pac-12, and I'm sure Madman can bring more of that up, and we can dive into it more. And but for me, it's more about the forward thinkingness of these two ADs, these two presidents, these two universities as a whole, and saying, what can we do to position ourselves to make not only our programs in athletics better, but our student athletes and just our students as a whole, our culture better. And they saw it as the Pac-12 as a dying institution, a dying brand, and the Big Ten as the up and coming new superpower, where it's going to be potentially two conferences in the Big Ten and the SEC. And if they didn't jump on board and they got left behind, they'd have a lot more to answer to than making this big leap.
I think that's totally fair. And there is a lot to blame with the leadership. I think it starts with Larry Scott. Kliavkoff, didn't do himself any favors. And, for that matter, I believe the Big Ten commissioner's name is Kevin Walters or, something like that. He got under a lot of flack for, canceling the football season in 2020. So I think a lot of people were putting pressure on him to make, some sort of seismic change, because football in the Midwest, I won't say it's quite as big as the South, but it is so big to an extent when you think of the traditions, the tailgates, things like that. For instance, my grandpa went to Michigan. I've gone there a couple times and tailgated for some of these games. It is nothing compared to anything I've been to on the West Coast in the best way possible. And that is something I'm looking forward to UCLA and USC investing in a little bit more, because let's be honest, the Rose Bowl and, the Coliseum have been relatively empty for what these stadiums could fill, given the last few years. Madman, who's to blame on this in the Pac-12? 0 to 100%. Going to give you the same question I gave to Ryer Dunn.
Yeah, Thriller, and it's a great question. And I have a little bit of a different take on it. I think the Pac-12 commissioner's office actually has very little blame. I think it's about 10%. I think where you can blame them is they needed to be more aggressive in renegotiating a media rights deal and not having these great Pac-12 after dark games where no one could watch, and no one really understood the quality of these teams and the quality of potential Heisman candidates and so forth. But even if you say they did that, and even if they were able to negotiate a better deal, they were not going to get anything close to $100 million. Here's the thing. The motion of this was set by OU and Texas going to the SEC. The writing was on the wall. And at the end of the day, this is like any industry that's going through consolidation. You're either going to be a buyer or you're going to be a seller. And the Pac-12 just does not have enough horses in the race to be a buyer. They were ultimately going to have to be a seller. There have only been 9 instances of a Pac-12 team that have won the national championship in the poll era. And 8 of those instances were either SC or UCLA. You just don't have the horses. And so at the end of the day, we can talk about what could have been done differently for the Pac-12. But the moment OU and Texas went to the SEC, the only other logical buyer here was the Big Ten for exactly the reason that you laid out, Thriller, because of the Midwest culture and the Southern culture, and we're headed towards a Power 2. And that's the reason why USC was always flirting, even before this, with the idea of being independent, like their other arch rival, Notre Dame, because they knew that even if they stayed in the Pac-12, even if they got a little bit more of a favorable media rights deal, 10, 20 million, if they got clipped in the regular season in a conference game, they were always going to get left out. Remember the Sanchez year in 2008? They had arguably the best defense in maybe modern college football, a 12-1 team. They got left out of the BCS national championship game because of lack of credibility with the Pac-12. And that has happened over and over again with the likes of the Oregons and with the likes of some of the Stanfords. And so the writing here was on the wall. And this is a UCLA show. So I'll end this segment with this here, Will. This had to be done from a UCLA perspective because they were $62.5 million in debt. The athletic budget had a $62.5 million deficit as a result of COVID, as a result of dead money to coaches, as a result of, bad media rights deal, and as a result of the failed Under Armour deal. Everyone forgets the Jordan brand has a lot of social cachet, cultural cachet that it's come in. That was a $45 million deal. The Under Armour deal was $280 million. You're talking about a $235 million short gap. UCLA had 3 choices. They either were going to have to get bailed out by the university and go all the way to the regents and to the state to actually make that case compared to the medical school or the engineering school or somebody else getting money, or they would have to cut a ton of other sports to support football, or the unthinkable where they would have to scale back football operations. So UCLA had to do something drastic. And I commend Martin Jarman for being so forward-thinking, so imaginative, leveraging those Big Ten relationships to go make this happen. So for me, this is very little about what the Pac-12 could or could not have done. I think that represents sort of an incomplete understanding of the economics of these two teams.
Couldn't agree more. And the forward thinking is there. And in my mind of things, I believe SC has had this vision for quite some time because you mentioned it a little bit. You go back to the last 25 years of the Pac-12, let's be honest. SC had its dominant run, but was very similar to that of like a Clemson or a Oklahoma within the Big 12. They were a one-trick pony, at least the conference Pac-12 was. Any other team was getting demolished by this team. We had a little bit of run with Chip Kelly, ironically, with the Oregon Ducks. They had a 3-year window where they were competing at a high level. We're a top 4 or 5 team. You can make the case Helfrich's Mariota-led squad got them to the national championship. But even those teams were a one-trick pony. Stanford flirted with success, but I never could kind of put them on that top line because even in their big bowl wins, it was against the likes of, Iowa and Oklahoma State. Those aren't powers. Those are very solid run college football teams that are perennially, in the top 25. Maybe they'll jump into the top 10 one year if they're having a lucky season. But for the most part, those aren't powers. Those are not teams that, scream, this is a successful, institution. This is a successful college football program. So I think something had to be done. I want to tip my cap to Jarman for, hopping on this, a friend of the Bruin Bible program. Just a big, big win from there.
Thriller, can I mention just one last thing before you go to the next question?
Of course.
Everyone forgets, even in the Carroll era, out of the 7 dominant years, SC only got the benefit of the doubt 2 of those years. Everyone forgets in 2003, SC was left out of the BCS. It was Oklahoma and it was Auburn. And so
share it.
AP champions. I mean, and so it was great. It was LSU. I'm sorry. It was LSU and Oklahoma. SC got left out because of a lack of respect for the Pac-12. The only time SC actually made it through to the national championship game was when they were undefeated in the regular season. That only happened in 04 and 05. Every time Carroll had 1 or 2 losses, they did not get a sniff of the main game. So even in the peak of Pac-12 supremacy, at its ultimate peak the last 25 or 30 years, they had to literally go perfect to get an invite.
It's literally insane. And the West Coast bias is real. I mean, this is not even a UCLA player, but give me a break if you don't think Christian McCaffrey should have won that Heisman back in 2015, 2016. My God. I mean, he broke the all-purpose yards record and came in second by a wide margin. You turn on the Rose Bowl, he's having the game of his life again, and fans are going, oh, yeah, I should have voted for McCaffrey. Maybe stay up a little later and watch the games. But they're not going to have that problem with now the 9 a.m. start times in the Midwest. I want to just kind of run over some winners and losers, and please feel free to add to this if you can. I think the biggest win, and this is for UCLA fans specifically, is West Coast recruiting for them is going to go through the roof. And USC has already kind of come back a little bit with Lincoln Riley. My fear as a UCLA fan and one that covers them, this is only going to give them on like a steroids-like quality. It's like when Barry Bonds was already one of the best players in the bigs. He takes steroids. Now he's hitting 73 jacks. It's USC is going to be that. But UCLA is going to get those guys now too because they have more money at their disposal, more money for NIL deals. Hey, you want to see your mom watch you on TV? We're going to be on ABC every single week with this new deal that we've got with ESPN and things like that coming through. I'm going to go with the recruiting. And I think for a long time, a lot of these, star players, left, the Southern California region to go to play in the SEC or the Big Ten because the competition was better there. And there was more, more opportunity there just to speak. I mean, you want to talk about the next 2 quarterbacks that are going to be in the draft, CJ Stroud and Bryce Young, both Southern California kids that didn't stay here because they went elsewhere to go for the bigger spotlight and the bigger dream. So I'm going to start it off. I'm going to go with Southern California recruiting for UCLA will be a big thing. I'm going to pass it to Rye or Die. Who is a winner in this, in your opinion?
Hopefully we'll go around the horn a few times. I think we can all come up with a couple, but I'm going to start with the UCLA and USC rivalry is a winner because I think we in LA know, any alumni knows how big this rivalry is. But nationally, it gets no love. The Victory Bell game gets so little love nationally. Part of that's been, the down years that these programs have both had over the last 5 or 6 seasons. I mean, USC did win the Rose Bowl just in 2017, but after that, they've been on a downfall, obviously, with Clay Helton. UCLA, obviously, with the transition to Chip Kelly, are finally now getting back into prowess. But overall, it's just the national narrative around this rivalry is not as big as other schools. We've all talked before how my dream, not just as owning this network, but just in general, because I live here in Los Angeles, is when you watch Michigan and Ohio State on Fox with Gus and the guys calling that game on Saturday morning at 9 a.m. at the Big House or the Shoe, and just seeing the passion, the electricity, everything. I was like, if we can somehow even grasp straws of that with USC and UCLA, I will be a happy, happy man. Just by now, this news of going to this conference, it will get, like you talked about with steroids, that rivalry will get injected with this passion because of the injection of steroids that is Fox. And Fox is now going to be pushing that so much because they are competing with ESPN and SEC. So Fox's product needs to be just as good. And now they're going to be pumping the SC UCLA rivalry. So I will start with that as a plus. It was already getting better and better anyway with Lincoln Riley come to LA, with Chip Kelly being retained and the transfer portal of what they've built. And now just having this media deal, these media rights, the fact they're playing in this conference that really loves football. And I think other fan bases will hate USC and hate UCLA, which is great for us because we're LA. We take the hate and we build on that. So that's what I'll start with as my winner, is the rivalry of the Victory Bell.
Great first winner from Rye or Die. Love it. Madman's got to follow that. I don't envy him for that as well. Madman, you got to give me a winner.
In terms of the winners with UCLA recruiting, USC recruiting, and the existing rivalry now getting this new national platform and going to the next level. I'll sort of add one where I think the big winners are some new rivalries. I think that I've always said, as both the USC and UCLA alum, from an SC perspective, I've always felt that SC was sort of geographically misplaced, that their expectations, just how much emphasis they put on football has always been outsized for the Pac-12. And SC fans love to show, that their teams are great. They got the swagger, they got the arrogance, they got the cockiness, and they're naturally sort of the West Coast's villain, right? And so they've always sort of taken on that role in much the same way Ohio State has taken on that role in the Midwest. Ohio State is sort of the Midwest's villain for all of the same reasons that USC is sort of the West Coast villain. And now you put those two in the same conference, and now both bullies share one playground, and they're ultimately going to fight. And I think a USC-Ohio State rivalry in this new Big Ten is going to be so fun. And similarly, I think when you think about UCLA and how well-rounded they are in the football and the basketball and the academics and the social and the extracurricular and just this sort of congenial school that everybody loves, who's the school that you sort of think of that's sort of comparable? It's Michigan. I know so many people that if they didn't go to UCLA would have wanted to go to Michigan. So many people that if they didn't go to Michigan, they wanted to go to UCLA. Those schools are actually very similar in terms of their brand and their ethos, Ryan. I know you're there. I was in a similar boat as well. Now you put Michigan and UCLA together. They're both competing for who's the best public university in the world. They both have got all this well-rounded sort of sports and athletics. Now they go head-to-head on the gridiron. They go head-to-head on the hardwood. They go head-to-head in the classroom. I think that's going to be really fun and compelling. So I think the existing rivalry is going to go to the next level, but I think there's some opportunities for some new rivalries that'll just add more interest and cross-geographical, cross-cultural, emphasis, more apparel, all of those things. So I really like this new rivalry piece.
Can I jump in here real quick, Will? I know this is your show, but because and if you have this segment later, then just tell me we're getting to it later. But because you brought up rivalries, I think it'd be fun. What are some non-Ohio State and Michigan rivalries that you guys are looking forward to? Because I think there's a lot of fun and intrigue with other teams. Like, we've had some in the Pac-12 of the non-powers, but can still be a lot of fun. So what are, whoever can take it.
You're talking about UCLA and SC coming to the Big Ten, like who they would be maybe rivals with, or
a new rivalry they can create that's not Ohio State, Michigan. Because I agree, UCLA, Michigan, Ohio State, USC is going to be the two big ones, but those two, who else would you see?
SC, Ohio State has to be one. I know Madman already took it, but can you imagine the game that it would be this year? Caleb Williams against Stroud in a quarterback duel? That might be the best quarterback duel in the last 10 years of college football. Like, that is exactly what I want. Inject that into my veins. Please take that. I would love it. But I just think there's so much opportunity. Like, I think I'm excited to see UCLA go to Happy Valley and play in that all white. That's going to be a game that with LA Football Network, I'll be covering that game in the future. I'm excited for that. Wisconsin doing the jump around, just the traditions and how much they're invested in it, because I think LA has the passion to, go to places like that, but the Pac-12 has been so stagnant for so long. So I just want to see the passion back in the seats. I'm not ready to declare a rival yet because that's got to play out on the field, but I am excited to build a rivalry with the fan bases and just go, hey, you guys might be Wisconsin, you guys might be Iowa, but you guys aren't UCLA. We've got a great thing going on here on the West Coast. You guys are sleeping on us. Just the shit talking that we can potentially get to with some of these teams, that's what's going to be the icing on the cake for me. I'm going to love that. So,
Ryan, it's a great question. I completely agree with Will. I think there's a couple sleeper opportunities. I really like kind of a UCLA Michigan State.
That's what I was going to say.
Because they're both got their chip on their shoulder a little bit, like the Michigan State feels, is a little brother to Michigan with the in-state. UCLA in football has always felt a little brother to USC. They both have chips on their shoulder. They're both angry, about that, and they're both going to let it out on each other. And I think that has the makings to be very spicy. Obviously, they played in basketball in the tournament. So I think there's a lot of ingredients there. Similarly, I think potentially USC Wisconsin could be a lot of fun as well, because Wisconsin also sort of very similar kind of fraternity culture that USC has, a lot of partying. So both fan bases are going to go really hard. And if you really look at what a budding rivalry in the Pac-12 kind of became in the last 10 years with USC-Utah, Wisconsin plays that physical brand at the lines with the run game, and they could kind of potentially beat up a more finesse USC team and a Lincoln Riley type team. So I think there could be some real tension there as well. And then maybe the last one, UCLA Northwestern, the two, let's get all the nerds together. They have to sort of deal with the academic rigors that many of the other schools don't. And so I think they kind of understand each other in a different way. And so I think that could be a fun one as well.
Yeah, the last one I'll throw in there, and then Will, you can take back over your show. But UCLA, Michigan State was my main one because exactly what you said, Jamal. The two little brothers in their respective.
Hey, I can't condone that on the Bruin Bible. We got to ease up with that little brother talk right there.
In football only, not in basketball. Obviously, UCLA is big brother in basketball, so in football only.
And UCLA is big brother in just about everything else too. So
yes. But the other one that I'm intrigued in here, and here's why, because on the surface it may not sound like it, but UCLA, Nebraska, and both being kind of more newcomer. Obviously, UCLA will be the brand newcomer in 2024, but Nebraska, remember, is not far from removed from the Big 12, joined the Big 10 fairly recently. Another team with a ton of history, a ton of pride, a ton of passion around their football team that has fallen on hard times. I mean, they have not had a successful season in quite some time. They brought Scott Frost over from UCF, hoping to, bring glory back to that team, and they haven't got it yet. They did extend him, hoping he can do that. So it's kind of two budding teams that have had a lot of history and a lot of pride. They can kind of elevate themselves at the same time almost, and UCLA may join the Big 10 right when Nebraska is finally getting back to relevance, and they can kind of be like, here's these two historical teams going head to head. So that could be another fun one. And hey, Lincoln, Nebraska for a football game with those Cornhuskers is a lot of fun too. And that'd be the shortest travel of all the teams too.
I think I'm most excited about the potential road games we could take trips around with LA Football Network to go to these, the Horseshoe, the Big House. I mean, these names are, synonymous with legendary college football seasons and teams. So excited that UCLA and USC can play in these games. But I'm going to keep it going with the winners. And I think there's one that is potentially, if he can get it right, can achieve everything he's been looking to do so since he has stepped foot on Westwood. And it's Chip Kelly. This is the ultimate career arc for Chip Kelly. This guy, to say that the move to the Big Ten was not about legacy, power, respect, that's BS. That is exactly what this move was for, to keep UCLA and USC into the college football world and, dominant in a lot of ways when it comes to the news cycle on the West Coast for football. Chip Kelly was on top of the college football world at Oregon, was praised unanimously for the offense he instituted at Oregon. And it almost seems ever since those praises, outside of a couple good, solid years with the Eagles, he's fallen on his face. And it's been a tumultuous experience for him trying to get back to the top of the coaching ranks. And for him to move to a conference like the Big Ten, he's got a chance on a silver platter to take back this for UCLA and his legacy as a coach. If he can come in there and get a couple 9 to 10 win seasons, elevate UCLA higher than people expected, I think this could be the ultimate career arc for a coach that's 18 and 25 at UCLA that, I think people are sleeping on him, potentially. I think a lot of UCLA fans wanted him out. Imagine if he goes in there and puts up back-to-back 10-win seasons to the Big Ten when this whole thing starts off. Am I crazy in saying Chip Kelly could be a major, major winner when going to the Big Ten?
No, I think it's a huge.
Yeah, go Ryan.
I think it's obviously a huge winner. Hopefully, it's hard having this conversation because we're still 2 years away, but I think it sets the program up for success moving forward. And then B, it'll the signing of Ken Norton Jr. obviously now helps with recruiting. So that helps Chip Kelly out, and he can just focus on X's and O's and really get his teams ready for playing some of these Big Ten schools in 2 years. Obviously the focus now is still on the Pac-12 and not. So no, I totally agree. Do you have anything to add, Madman, or can I give another winner? Or do you want to add on Chip Kelly?
You said it best.
Okay, so I'll take another approach in the winners because I think everyone at UCLA is a winner. I mean, I could go down the list. Martin Jarman, huge winner. Everything we already said, but I'll take a little different approach, and I'm going to go because I have two losers in this category that I'm sure you would all agree with. But I'm going to go two winners two teams in the Pac-12. I'm going to go with Arizona and Arizona State are winners. And here's why. Let me explain. These are two teams, in my opinion. I know, Will, you went to one of these schools, so maybe you disagree. But in my opinion, these have been two very middling Pac-12 teams for a long time. I know Arizona's been great in basketball, but they never get the national attention again. They're always just kind of the middle of the road. And I'm not even talking in terms of competitiveness. I was talking in terms of brand. Like ASU and U of A are always the middle of the pack in brand. They're going to always be below SC, UCLA, Oregon, Washington, and probably even below Stanford and maybe even Cal. They just can never get over that, no matter how good they do, no matter how good the recruiting trail gets. And now with this news, there's already been reports that they're maybe not in talks, but there's rumors that maybe they go to the Big 12 or they get pulled into another conference or they get a big media deal or they're like become the faces of the Pac-12 South to save the Pac-12. So we'll see how it plays out. But I think they kind of are a winner in this because they were never going to be a face of the Pac-12 ever, unless they just became absolutely dominant, and they haven't done that. And so this kind of almost gives them on a silver platter either the face of the Pac-12 South or joining a new conference where they can make a new identity for themselves.
Yeah, I hear your point, but it's also like
you
it's
can disagree.
Also like,
that's fine.
The cool thing with ASU and U of A was they were a part of an entourage of a celebrity, right? And then it's like the celebrity kicks them on the curb and they got to create their own career, which is not going to go well because the only legitimacy they had was being with this conference as a whole, right? So, yeah, they could be the face of the Pac-12, but at that point, like, are the top 20 teams, 25 teams all going to be in the SEC and Big Ten at this point? It's kind of like you're the best of the worst. Do you know what I mean when it comes to that? Because that's how I feel it's going to be moving forward, because I really feel this is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to that point.
What's to that point, Will, what's better, being the best of the worst or being just no one even knows, just being a 35th ranked school that no one talks about? Or you can be the best of the worst and like, oh, whatever, we're 10-2 and we play in the Rose Bowl every year.
I mean, the Rose Bowl isn't even going to have the same hype it once had. So for me, I got to throw that out. But I think for me personally, it's just like you can at least have that SC game on the schedule that gets the fans out. You can have that Oregon game on the schedule. Get me excited for who? San Diego State and Boise State coming in? Get out of here. I'm not excited about that. That's a bummer of a game. So I don't know. I'd rather be associated with the conference than not. I think it's likely they'll both move to the Big 12 if things continue to progress like this in the Pac-12, which is you're getting Baylor and TCU, which is, I mean, it's okay football. We'll take it. But yeah, I hear the point, but I would pivot back. That would just be my stance. As someone that went to ASU, I just would rather be associated with those big games because that's what makes it exciting. I don't want to play with mediocre teams, man. So, Madman, you got a winner for me?
I got an interesting winner as well. I think a different take. I completely agree with everything you guys have said, and so you guys have said.
We disagreed. So well. How can you agree with everything we said? We disagreed.
No, I agree. No one wants to be the backup dancer, So it's I agree with Thriller there, where it's like I mean, this is sort of tough, but I'll give you an out of the box winner. It's Dorian Thompson-Robinson, because he has an opportunity now to set his legacy. He has come back for unfinished business. He and Charbonnet have come back. Can you imagine how much this is going to be in the hearts and in the minds and in the souls of historic alumni, that in the second to last year and next year in the last year of the traditional Pac-12 versus Big Ten Rose Bowl, UCLA wins the Rose Bowl, or Dorian Thompson-Robinson takes them to that Pac-12 championship, takes them to that Rose Bowl championship. It would be such a special, historic moment for the program and for him. It would etch his legacy as one of the all-time great UCLA Bruin quarterbacks. It would put Charbonnet in rarefied air. It would put Thriller Chip Kelly in rarefied air to give him the currency necessary to really be set up for success for those potential 10-win seasons in the Big Ten. So I think that this is a huge opportunity for DTR and Charbonnet coming back, being the leaders of this team, because you only get 2 more shots at the traditional Pac-12 now before everything changes. And who knows whether we even have bowl games anymore after this. Once it becomes kind of a power 2, it really sort of becomes, do you expand to 8 playoff teams and 2 from the SEC, 2 from the Big Ten and 4 at-larges. There's a lot of different things that can happen, and the whole landscape of college football would change. And so for all of those reasons and for those historic alumni, DTR has a chance to create a legacy that could be unparalleled.
I agree. And we've been saying it all offseason. This is a massive year for UCLA. The implications just got bigger, like you mentioned.
Absolutely.
It's like you can ride this hot streak if you play your cards right into a successful tenure in the Big Ten for the first few years, which is unparalleled. It's going to bring unlimited amounts of money to you. It's going to bring recruiting to you, national attention, fans filling up the Rose Bowl. This is exactly why you make a move to the Big Ten in the first place, right? So if they play their cards right and the pieces are there, it's not a perfect team, but you got DTR and Charbonnet, two of the best the Pac-12 can offer this year, maybe even the country at their own positions. This could be huge. Do we have any other winners on the list? Because I'm trying to.
I got one more.
Give me the winner, Ryder.
I got one more. Well, I could do more, but I'll say one more. Then if you want, we can move on. I'm going to go with the Rose Bowl Stadium. And here is in relative to UCLA, not the Rose Bowl game, but the Rose Bowl Stadium as their home venue, because it's no secret that attendance has been down for quite some time, and it's been tough to fill this iconic, beautiful venue. And there's other things at play here with just the distance from campus and whatnot. But a lot of that has been lack of success, lack of excitement around the program. And I think this year, not even 2 years from now when they're in the Big Ten, this year, the fact that they went 8-4 last year and had their, first bowl appearance. I know it got canceled, but bowl appearance in a long, long time. The excitement around DTR and Charbonnet returning, the excitement heading into this year about the potential of this program growing. And now with this news of UCLA, Martin Jarman, the forward thinking, jumping into a big time conference, I think fans are going to get extremely excited, and they're going to start packing that place. And also the history, like you mentioned, the last 2 seasons in the Pac-12, people want to be a part of that. People always want to be a part of history. This could be the last time UCLA plays. I mean, I personally think they'll have Cal on their schedule still every year. I think they'll somehow work that out. But who knows? This could be the last time they play Stanford. This could be the last time they play Washington State. This could be the last time they play. I know Utah's more of a newer thing because they joined the Pac-12, but a lot of these Pac-12 rivalries, Pac-10 rivalries, it could be the last time they see them in the Rose Bowl. So aside from the excitement of jumping conferences, it's about being a part of history for the last time, seeing some of these great matchups that we've seen. And so for that, the Rose Bowl, the venue that is one of the greatest venues in the entire world, I think is a huge winner, because it'll be a packed house, hopefully every Friday night and Saturday morning. And we'll be at that tailgate up at Brookside Golf Course at hole 9 by the fountain, drinking delicious beers and having a good time. So can't wait.
No, I love it. And, it's great. I am excited about it. It's going to be weird, though, because all these Big Ten teams dream of playing the Rose Bowl. Like January, they're going to be playing road games there every other year now. So it is going to be a little strange. But in terms of packing the house, this gets the casual fan back involved for UCLA. Oh, Michigan's in town next week. I want to go see them play. Ohio State. Oh, wow. The next Saquon Barkley is the running back for Penn State. I want to go see that. I think
the city of Pasadena, where the Rose Bowl resides, like you may not even be a UCLA fan, but the fact the Rose Bowl is a mile from Old Town, and you're like, oh, we get this budding, young, fun UCLA team run by Chip Kelly, and you get Ohio State coming to town, or like you mentioned, it's like, yeah, I'll go to the game. So it's just going to be great for the fan experience, the game day experience all around.
Yeah, dude, and I'm excited for it. It's just I think the attendance is going to go up by 15 to 20,000 once we make that move to the Big Ten, which I'm excited about. Any other winners, Madman? And I'll let Ryan go. He's got a couple more that he wants to get through. So,
Thriller, I think it's a win all around, for the program. And I think, a huge winner here. I mean, it's obvious, but, Jarman's a huge winner in all of this for, again, doubling down and being able to sort of get UCLA to this elevated place. You can't help but think he had a lot to do with it behind the scenes with his Big Ten connections and what have you. I think it's a huge win for the current players. I think it's a big win for future UCLA students when you've got Big Ten co-eds coming to Pasadena, all football seasons. So I think that's going to be really fun for the student body for a number of football and non-football reasons. But I think that it's sort of win all around from a UCLA perspective.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Barney's Beanery is going to be popping down on Colorado Boulevard. So, last winter I'll put, and then move on. Last winter, we got to go with the Jumpman brand, the Jordan brand that is synonymous with Michigan football and now has been synonymous with UCLA football. Well, now those brands collide in the rivalry we talked about. That could be a lot of fun. So not only the football program is a rivalry, the basketball program is a rivalry, but the brand that is Jordan, and now it's like synonymous with both those. So how huge is that? Jordan had to be pumped when he heard this move, saying his two biggest brands potentially in college football are now going to be playing against each other every single year.
We got to get MJ out we got to get MJ Martin Jarman to get the other MJ out to Pasadena when they play each other in the first home game at the Rose Bowl. That will be epic as hell.
At the LAFB tailgate, no big deal.
Only on the Bruin Bible can Michael Jordan be called the other MJ. That was amazing.
Of course, man. Of course. You know, MJ is a friend of the podcast. We have to put him up.
He's our MJ. He is the MJ. Absolutely. I love it.
You got to send that clip to Martin Jarman. Like, just say you're MJ number one.
We bleed UCLA, baby blue and gold. Then Michael Jordan is the other MJ.
The other MJ. And as far as Westwood and Pasadena goes, he's the other MJ. We love it. I think we came out to a real conclusion here that this is overall a positive move for UCLA. We're excited about it. Does come with some hesitations and some sad feelings about the past, but I thought we wrapped it up in a good way, and we were getting UCLA Nation ready for this move to the Big Ten. Fellas, thank you so much for coming on. I've kept you on far too long. Bruin Bible, we are officially out.